So this is my second sketchbook tour, and this is for my Burning Souls can design project. So to begin with, we have my interpretation of the brief. This is also in the PowerPoint. And after kind of thinking about where to start, I did a mind map, just thinking about Burning Souls and kind of the idea of passion, and also Burning Souls relating to witches and Black Sabbath, and Black Sabbath being kind of Birmingham and Ozzy Osbourne, and thinking about local ideas. And I wanted to go on a derive because I think psychogeography is really, really cool. But obviously because of coronavirus I wasn't able to do that, so that limited my options. And I wanted to do like a landscape of the jewellery quarter, but I couldn't go and take photos, so that was eliminated as well. I went on to do some thumbnails, and I was looking at kind of octopuses and monsters and calling it Witch's Brew, and an awful illustration of Ozzy Osbourne, and kind of snakes and stuff. And this was kind of where I thought it was going, down this witchy vibe. And then I did some research into Trooper, which is made by Robinsons, and this information is in the PowerPoint as well. And I did a mood board, I guess. And at this point I was thinking about perhaps calling it the Osbourne, and these are all Ozzy Osbourne's tattoos on this t-shirt here. If I lift this up you can see that better. And this was kind of the direction I was thinking of going, and I was looking at kind of things that would write around the can. This is a lino print of the octopus, and then back to the idea of the snake, and like Ozzy's tattoos, a snake that would wrap around the can. And these are done digitally, and they were successful enough, and that was where it was going. But then obviously we had the lockdown and being able to do all the line in print, and I wanted to do like an etched version of this. And then I was also thinking about materials I could collect on derives around Birmingham and then use them to paper cut create the imagery. But then obviously the lockdown started, so during that I watched a documentary. It was an explained Netflix documentary, and it was about the intrabang. All this information is on the PowerPoint as well. And the intrabang is when you put a question mark and an exclamation mark next to each other. And I thought that was really great because I use this all the time in text, in emails, everywhere. But I didn't know what it was. And so I thought that was really kind of interesting. And I thought you could have loads and loads of imagery around those marks. And so I went on to do some tissue paper layering, because that's a method I really, really like. And experimenting with putting it onto different textures to see what you got and how the colours changed. And this I thought was really successful, and I turned them into a pattern. Obviously, if I'd have had access to the print room, I probably would have developed this into screen print, because I think that would have been a really nice development, and then I could have compared the two and chosen from there. But obviously we can't do that at the moment because of the coronavirus, and this is just some typography experimentation. I then went on to look at some stitch, and so these are all embroidered, just intrabangs, experimenting with it, and a pattern of my favourite there. So at this point I was kind of looking at creating a pattern that would wrap around the can, and that would be my main illustration. So I created some lino stamps because I wanted to, when I thought I'd be able to get back in the print room, I wanted to use letterpress, but obviously I haven't been able to try that either, so I kind of made my own exclamation mark and question marks using lino. They weren't very successful, but I've still tried it, so it was more to rule it out, I suppose. And these are just the patterns I made up of them afterwards in different colourways and stuff, and trying to make a focal point, and then trying to work towards my target market. So if you're looking at kind of artisan breweries, so you're thinking kind of young people, the kind of 18 to 25 age demographic, so bright colours, kind of trying to visually prompt the idea of like clubs and pubs and things. So at this point I wasn't really sure what I was doing, what I was designing for, so I had a go at perhaps having a go at what would go on the can, and then this was my first idea of what the can would look like. I think these were all going to be like question marks and things, and then trying to write intrabang so it looked like an exclamation mark. Yeah, and then I went back to the successful tissue paper layering, Oh, so you can see that. And these are all the letters I made up. Using tissue paper to spell out Intrabang. And then I think around here we actually have, yeah, so that's what it looked like, to try and make it look like an exclamation point, which I thought was quite, you know, innovative, but I was aware that you can't quite tell what it says, so perhaps this wasn't appropriate. And then I thought about, well, I've only done exclamation marks so far, so experimenting with question marks, and then I put them in a pattern together, and that's just the question marks on their own. And this I really liked. I thought this was really cool, and I could see it wrap round a can, so that was interesting and just successful. And I thought the tertiary colours worked well, and it just was a nice, it's a nice balance with the black on the white. And yeah, this is kind of where it's going. Oh yes, my brief moment of not quite sure what I'm doing. So I kind of, while I liked my tissue paper layering, I'd got kind of other things I wanted to try. So this is just question marks and exclamation marks drawn with what was this? I want to say a Posca pen, but it was obviously on its last legs. And then once again, developed into patterns. I really liked this squared paper. So I can remember thinking this was the most successful thing from this experiment, was that I'd found the squared paper. And that could be like a possibility in the future. After that, I was thinking about other ways I could kind of make a logo for it. So I drew out the Intrabang letters and a question mark and exclamation mark. And this is just some variants of it. And I've put a rhizo texture in the background, which I think is really, really nice. And just experimenting once again. I'm kind of sticking to these tertiary colour palette I got that I thought was working well. So those are all there. Just another experiment. They weren't successful and they weren't not successful. They were just kind of there. And so at this point I wasn't really sure what I was doing. I got some successful elements, I got some less successful elements. This was the turning point because this was horrific. So I wanted to use spray paint stencils because obviously I hadn't been able to do the screen print that I've talked about. But I don't have spray paint here, so this is sheet paint, which doesn't stick to paper very well. But this was all my experiments with it. Yeah, and there was a lot of this. A lot of this. And playing with ways to layer it and different patterns you got. How it did this wonderful crackling effect. I don't know if you can tell that there. But that was really interesting. These are horrifically messy still. These are like 6 weeks old now and they're still not dry. So this is why I didn't continue this, because they are just, you know, they're lovely images, but horrendously messy. I think these are just exclamation marks that I experimented with making. So yes, you get the idea that this was kind of, I knew that I didn't need to develop anymore because somewhere in the stuff I'd already done, there was a successful pattern. Yeah. So moving on from this, I did some typography research, and I started at looking at this. This is the name of the studio, because they do this really cool like retro screen print. I thought I could relate it back to the tissue paper lettering I'd already done, and I really like this, but I was worried because it's not very commercial. You wouldn't expect to see it on a beer can. So I went over and looked at some more kind of digital fonts that I've collected from DeFont. I had done some can research, and so this was kind of what I was seeing more of, so I think that's why I drew towards this. Obviously, if I've been able to go on my derives, what I would have liked to have done is collected loads and loads of posters and cut all the letters out from them, and that's how I would have made up the letters. But at this point, I liked the handmade stuff, but I didn't think it was really appropriate. I got the digital stuff and it wasn't really working, so I looked at the element that I had to include, which is the logo. And here, in this bottom corner, you can see this is their logo. I'm sure you're familiar with. And I was like, this is cool, but it doesn't really fit with my style of stuff. So I went and I traced this actually. So I traced it, but did it in continuous lines. So it was a little bit more rough around the edges. So it fitted with my question marks. And then I picked up the typography from this and made up the rest of the alphabet to make the intrabang. Because I was just thinking about it, you know, to give it some consistency and to kind of make the logo. I was really conscious about making the logo fit within my design, because I didn't want to design this gorgeous wraparound of the pattern and then just have to stamp the logo on. I really wanted it to work as a like unified composition. This is my first go, because obviously what lots of people don't know what an intrabang is, so I was trying to be like explaining what it is, and putting this on the can, and you'll see now in my first couple of attempts. Oh no, that's later on. Now we have my logo idea. So I've talked about the fact that I didn't know what to do with his logo, because I knew it needed to fit in the design, but I didn't just want to plonk it on somewhere randomly. And so I did some research, actually based off a Carling can, on how they put their can design together. That's linked in the PowerPoint as well. Well, it's not linked in the PowerPoint. It is in the PowerPoint. And I kind of was looking at ways I could make it all fit together. And so I came up with these like tissue paper borders almost, and I was thinking the text could fit in them and the logo could go in the circle. So that was kind of what I was experimenting with here. Ways to fit everything together. And so once I'd gone, yeah, this really worked, I had to go at just drawing up some first ideas. I printed off Chris's template so I knew what size I was working to. I know this template isn't a real size to a real can, mildly aggravating, but yes, it's what we've got to work with. So I had a go, and this is kind of what I was thinking, that I'd have the logo, information top and bottom, and then the pattern would wrap around the rest of the can, to kind of, so you'd have your important information, and then the pattern would work around the whole thing, kind of encapsulating the government regulations. And then this was just another idea. I thought about using that first image and then putting the pattern around, but I was really drawing towards this and my tissue paper layering, which you'll see in a minute is what I went with. So the next bit, this is all my trial and error. So I think we'll start from the back, because it starts at the back. So this is what I started with to begin with. I was thinking about having the pattern quite big and then having the logo plonked on it, and that wasn't really working. So I tried putting more pattern of the on and shrinking this down, but then this wasn't big enough for you to be able to read the text, I thought. So then we went back to the way it was before, but I still didn't like the pattern. So we shrunk the pattern down a bit, but it still looked wrong. So then we put the text on. And I'm like, yes, this is looking better. This works. You know, putting the logo in the circle works. I really like that. I thought that was really successful, a way to amalgamate it into the design. And then I just picked this typewriter font I really like. But it's too small. You can't read that even up that close. It just won't focus. No. Too small. And it just looks random here with the other stuff. So I then changed that typography to say Original Brew in these letters, which I think works well. You know, the hand-done logo really works. And then I chose to write out the little since 2021 and what that says. I really liked this, but it was too wordy at the bottom. It just makes it too heavy down here. So you'll see when I show you my final design, it's not quite in the right order, that I changed it. And I found this font under font that's like kind of in the middle. So it's a digital font, but it's meant to look handwritten. And then just to add a little extra, I put the intrabang either side. And then this down here says, what even is an intrabang? Which, when I was telling people about the design, this is what everyone says. What even is it? So I thought that was really kind of quirky, that it would perhaps prompt people to go and figure out what it is, or to watch the Netflix documentary. And then you can just tell here that I've sized down the question marks again, so you have more of the pattern wrapped around the can. And then here you have my mock-ups But I love my mock-ups. So this is how I'm imagining it would look, and this is where your important information would go. And this is the front of the can with the logo-y thing and the information. And then this is what I feel like it would look like on a smaller can. So yeah, this is my Intrabang Burning Souls sketchbook.